Admiral Sethkar of the Hegemony Fleet gazed through the viewing port at the blue marble spinning peacefully in the void. Earth. Such a simple name for what should have been their easiest conquest yet. The primitive world barely had space travel beyond their own moon, and their technology was laughably outdated compared to the galactic standard. "Begin the invasion protocol," Sethkar commanded, his forearms working the control panels with practiced efficiency. Around him, his bridge crew of various alien species moved with the confidence of a military force that had never known defeat. The hegemony had conquered over 3,000 worlds in the past century. Earth would be number 3001. The first wave of ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Massive dreadnoughts, each one capable of glassing an entire continent, took positions over major population centers. Smaller craft spread across the planet's surface, ready to begin the harvest. The hegemony didn't destroy worlds they conquered. They preferred their slaves alive and working. On the surface, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the alien vessels through her laboratory window at the Montana Research Facility. She had been working late on her latest project when the ships appeared. Unlike the panicking crowds in the cities, Sarah felt a strange calm wash over her. She reached for her secure communication device and sent a single coded message to a number known to very few people on Earth. "The package is ready for delivery." Thousands of miles away, in a hidden bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, General Marcus Stone received the message. He had been waiting for this day for 15 years. Around him, men and women in military uniforms moved with purpose, activating systems that had been built in secret, funded by black budgets, and tested in the darkest corners of human ingenuity. "All units, this is command. Operation Homecoming is now active. Repeat, Operation Homecoming is active." The hegemony's first mistake was assuming that humans would react like every other species they had conquered. Most civilizations, when faced with overwhelming force, either surrendered immediately or fought brief, feudal wars before collapsing. The hegemony expected mass panic, quick surrender, and easy subjugation. Instead, they found empty cities. Commander Vextar led the ground forces into New York City, expecting to round up millions of humans for processing. His troops marched through streets that should have been filled with terrified civilians. Instead, they found abandoned cars, open doors, and an eerie silence that made even his battle-hardened soldiers nervous. "Where are they?" Vextar muttered, his three eyes scanning the empty buildings. That's when the first trap was sprung. The explosion came from beneath, as fusion charges detonated in the subway tunnels. The street collapsed, swallowing 2 companies of hegemony soldiers. Before Vextar could react, war explosions rippled across the city. Buildings that had seemed abandoned suddenly revealed hidden weapon emplacements. Kinetic cannons emerged from false storefronts, firing rounds that punched through alien armor like paper. But these weren't the primitive weapons the hegemony had expected. The rounds were made of materials that shouldn't have existed on a pre-spaceflight world. They contained antimatter cores that detonated on impact, creating miniature stars that consumed everything in their blast radius. "Impossible," Vextar breathed as he watched his soldiers disintegrate under the human assault. Similar scenes played out across the globe. In London, Paris, Tokyo, and 100 other cities, the hegemony forces found themselves walking into carefully prepared kill zones. The humans hadn't panicked and fled randomly. They had evacuated according to plans that had been decades in the making. Admiral Sethkar watched the reports flood in from the surface with growing disbelief. His supposedly primitive enemies were using technology that matched or exceeded hegemony standards. Cloaked human fighters appeared from nowhere, their engines producing energy signatures he didn't recognize. They moved with impossible speed and agility, dancing around his interceptors like they were standing still. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups from the planet's surface," his sensor officer reported. "Multiple locations, all focusing on our ships." Sethkar's heart sank as he understood what was happening. Evasive maneuvers. All ships scatter. But it was too late. The first orbital defense cannon fired from a mountain in Colorado. The beam was pure white energy that cut through space at the speed of light. It struck the dreadnought Conquest of Worlds amidships, and the massive vessel simply ceased to exist. no explosion, no debris field. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, its atoms scattered across local space. More beams lanced upward from hidden positions on every continent. The hegemony fleet, which had entered Earth's system with over 200 vessels, began dying in minutes. Ships that had survived battles with the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were being destroyed by a world that supposedly barely understood nuclear fusion. Retreat! Zethkar screamed into his communications array. All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. But, as his surviving vessels tried to pull back, they found their way blocked. Human ships had appeared seemingly from nowhere, rising from the dark side of the moon, emerging from asteroid fields, and decloaking from positions throughout the solar system. They weren't the primitive chemical rockets the hegemony had expected. These were sleek, predatory vessels that moved with the deadly grace of apex predators. The human fleet opened fire. The weapons they used defied everything the hegemony thought they knew about technology. Some fired bursts of twisted spacetime that collapsed enemy shields by folding them into higher dimensions. Others launched swarms of microscopic drones that burrowed through armor and consumed ships from the inside out. Still others projected fields that somehow convinced matter to forget how to hold together. Admiral Zethkar found himself trapped in the middle of a nightmare. His flagship, the pride of the hegemony, shuddered under impacts from weapons that shouldn't have been possible. His crew, veterans of 1,000 battles, worked frantically at their stations as systems failed around them. How, he whispered, watching his fleet die on the tactical display. How did they know we were coming? How did they prepare for this? An answer came from an unexpected source. His communication array crackled to life, and a human voice spoke in perfect hegemonic standard. Admiral Zethkar, this is General Stone of the United Earth Defense Force. You asked how we knew you were coming. The answer is simple. We've been watching you for a very long time. On the main screen, an image appeared. It showed a man in military uniform standing in what appeared to be a command center. Behind him, Zethkar could see displays showing the positions of every hegemony ship in the system. 15 years ago, you conquered the Tauri system, Stone continued. What you didn't know is that one of our deep space research vessels was conducting a survey mission there. They witnessed your attack and managed to escape with full recordings of your technology and tactics. Zethkar's blood ran cold. The Tauri conquest had been routine, just another primitive world added to the hegemony's territory. If humans had been there, if they had seen. We spent 15 years preparing for you, Stone said. 15 years building defenses, developing weapons, and evacuating our civilian population to secure locations. 15 years studying your every move through hidden monitoring stations we placed throughout the galaxy. Did you think we were just sitting on our little world, oblivious to the universe around us? The pride of the hegemony lurched as another human weapon found its mark. Zethkar could feel his ship dying around him. You made a fundamental error in judgment, Admiral, Stone continued. You assumed that because we hadn't spread beyond our solar system, we were primitive. You never considered that perhaps we hadn't expanded because we were busy preparing for you. More human ships appeared on the sensors, these ones emerging from hidden bases in the outer solar system. They moved in perfect formation, their tactics flawless, their weapons devastating. This wasn't a desperate last stand by a primitive civilization. This was a carefully orchestrated military operation executed by a species that had spent years preparing for this exact scenario. You see, Admiral, humans have a particular talent that sets us apart from other species, Stone said. We're very good at learning from the mistakes of others. Every world you've conquered taught us something about your methods. Every species you've enslaved showed us your weaknesses. We've been building our defenses based on the combined knowledge of every civilization you've ever destroyed. Zethkar watched his tactical display with growing horror. His fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to anticipate his every move. Every time he tried to regroup, the humans were already there, waiting. Every time he attempted a tactical maneuver, they had already prepared a counter. Impossible, he breathed. No single world could have built all this in just 15 years. General Stone smiled coldly. You're right. no single world could have. But Earth isn't alone, Admiral. You see, while you were busy conquering civilizations, some of us were busy making allies. Every species you've enslaved, every world you've conquered, every civilization you've destroyed left survivors. And those survivors found their way to us. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. If the humans had been in contact with other species, if they had been gathering refugees and sharing technology. The combined knowledge of 3,000 civilizations, Admiral Stone continued. 15 years of the greatest minds from every corner of the galaxy working together with one single goal, stopping you. Did you really think we would just roll over and die like the others? As if to emphasize the point, a new wave of human ships entered the battle. But these weren't of human design alone. Zethkar recognized technology from dozens of different species he had conquered. Crystalline energy shields from the Veltar. Quantum weaponry from the Noxri. Spacetime manipulation drives from the ancient Kethmori. The humans hadn't just prepared for the hegemony's arrival. They had united the galaxy's survivors into a single, implacable force dedicated to revenge. The pride of the hegemony's hull began to buckle as human weapons tore through its defenses. Zethkar's bridge filled with smoke and the screams of dying crew members. Through it all, General Stone's voice continued, calm and measured. Surrender now, Admiral, and you and your surviving crew will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue fighting, and we will show you exactly what happens when you threaten humanity's home. Zethkar looked around his dying ship, at his panicking crew, at the tactical display that showed his once mighty fleet reduced to scattered, burning wreckage. For the first time in his military career, he faced an enemy that was not just stronger, but smarter, more prepared, and absolutely merciless in their efficiency. The hegemony had come to enslave Earth. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Admiral Zethkar's hands trembled as he reached for the surrender transmitter. Around him, the pride of the hegemony was dying. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows across his bridge as systems failed one by one. His crew, the finest warriors in the galaxy, worked desperately to keep their ship alive just a few minutes longer. Admiral, his tactical officer called out, her voice tight with fear. We're receiving surrender requests from across the fleet. Only 37 ships remain operational. 37 ships. Out of 212 that had entered the Sol system less than 6 hours ago. The humans had destroyed an entire battle fleet with surgical precision, turning the most powerful military force in the galaxy into scattered wreckage floating in the void. Zethkar activated the surrender signal and spoke into his communicator with what little dignity he had left. General Stone, this is Admiral Zethkar. The hegemony fleet surrenders unconditionally. We request mercy for our surviving crew members. The humans' response came quickly. Admiral, your surrender is accepted. Reduce your weapons to zero charge and prepare to be boarded. Any vessel that attempts to flee or shows hostile intent will be destroyed immediately. As Zethkar gave the orders to power down their weapons, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The humans had shown they could fight, but what would they do with victory? He didn't have to wait long to find out. The human boarding parties arrived within the hour, moving through the captured hegemony vessels with the efficiency of a military force that had planned for this exact scenario. Zethkar watched through his ship's internal monitors as humans in advanced combat armor secured his vessel. Their equipment was unlike anything he had seen before, incorporating technology from dozens of different civilizations. But it was the humans themselves that truly unsettled him. They moved with purpose and professionalism, treating hegemony prisoners with firm but fair efficiency. There was no rage, no desire for revenge in their actions. They processed captured personnel like they were handling a routine military operation, not the aftermath of an attempted genocide. When General Stone finally arrived aboard the Pride of the Hegemony, Zethkar was surprised by what he saw. The human was older than he had appeared on the communication screen, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of years carrying heavy responsibilities. He wore a simple military uniform without excessive decoration, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. Admiral, Stone said, inclining his head slightly in what Zethkar recognized as a gesture of professional respect. I trust your crew is being treated well? Zethkar found himself nodding despite his confusion. They are, General. I confess, this is not what I expected from a primitive species. Stone's expression didn't change. Perhaps that's part of the problem, Admiral. You keep calling us primitive. Tell me, what exactly did you plan to do with our world once you conquered it? The question caught Zethkar off guard. The standard protocol. Population reduction to manageable levels, then, integration into the hegemony work system. Your people would have been relocated to industrial worlds where they could contribute to galactic civilization. Ah, Stone said quietly. Slavery, then. Mass murder followed by slavery. Zethkar bristled. The hegemony brings order to chaos, General. We unite primitive civilizations under a single, efficient government. Your people would have been given purpose, structure, meaning. Would they? Stone walked to the viewing port and gazed out at the wreckage of the hegemony fleet. Tell me, Admiral, in all your conquests, have you ever asked a conquered population if they wanted to be unified under hegemony rule? The question was absurd. Primitive civilizations don't understand what's best for them. They cling to outdated concepts like national sovereignty and individual freedom. These things only lead to conflict and inefficiency. Stone turned back to face him. And, yet, here we are. Your efficient hegemony military has just been defeated by a collection of supposedly primitive civilizations working together voluntarily. No conquest required. No slavery needed. Just cooperation born of mutual respect and shared purpose. Before Zethkar could respond, Stone activated a portable holographic display. The image that appeared made the Admiral's blood run cold. It showed a star map of the galaxy, but not as the hegemony knew it. This map showed hidden settlements, secret bases, and cloaked ships scattered throughout space. Thousands of them. For 15 years, Admiral, we've been doing something the hegemony never tried. We've been asking people what they want. The survivors of your conquests, the refugees from your wars, the enslaved populations you scattered across the galaxy. We asked them if they wanted revenge, or if they wanted something better. Stone touched a control, and the holographic display zoomed in on a section of space that Zethkar knew was empty. Except it wasn't empty anymore. The display showed a massive space station surrounded by ships of a dozen different designs, all working together in apparent harmony. This is Haven Station, Stone explained. Built in secret over the past 10 years by refugees from 12 different worlds you conquered. They share technology, resources, and knowledge freely. No slavery, no forced integration, no efficient government required. Just people choosing to work together because it makes them stronger. The display shifted to show another hidden settlement, then another. Zethkar watched in growing amazement as Stone revealed a vast network of free civilizations that had been growing in secret right under the hegemony's nose. We've learned something important, Admiral, Stone continued. Cooperation is more powerful than conquest. When people choose to work together, they accomplish things that no amount of forced labor ever could. Your hegemony rules through fear and violence. We've built something based on hope and mutual aid. Zethkar stared at the display, trying to process what he was seeing. Impossible. Without central authority, without unified command, civilizations descend into chaos. It's the natural order. Stone smiled grimly. Is it? Or is that just what conquerors tell themselves to justify their actions? He touched another control, and the display showed real-time feeds from the hidden settlements. Zethkar saw beings from dozens of species working side by side, sharing meals, teaching their children together, building things that defied imagination. This is what the galaxy looks like when civilizations are free to choose their own path, Stone said. No slaves, no conquered worlds, no enforced unity. Just people working together because they want to build something better than what came before. The bridge's communication system activated, and a new voice filled the air. It was speaking in Veltar, one of the languages from a world the hegemony had conquered decades ago. Zethkar understood it perfectly, thanks to his universal translator, but what the voice was saying made no sense. General Stone, this is Captain Velmara of the Starborn Liberation Fleet. Our forces are in position throughout the Nexus sector. We await your orders to begin Operation Homecoming Phase 2. Zethkar felt his remaining heart sink. Phase 2? Stone's expression grew serious. Admiral, you don't seem to understand the situation. This battle wasn't about defending Earth. This was about sending a message to every enslaved world in the galaxy. The hegemony isn't invincible. It can be beaten. The display changed again, showing real-time communications from across the galaxy. Zethkar watched in horror as reports flooded in from hegemony worlds. Slave uprisings. Secret resistance cells activating. Hidden fleets of liberated ships attacking hegemony installations. You see, Admiral, while your fleet was here trying to conquer Earth, our allies were busy freeing every world you ever enslaved. 15 years of careful planning, secret communication, and coordinated resistance. Every slave you ever took, every world you ever conquered, every civilization you ever scattered, they've all been waiting for this moment. The scope of it was staggering. Zethkar watched as hundreds of worlds erupted in simultaneous rebellion. The slaves the hegemony had relocated across the galaxy weren't scattered and broken, they had been secretly organizing, building hidden networks, preparing for the day they could strike back. The Veltar shipyards you thought you controlled? They'd been building ships for the Liberation Fleet for 5 years. The Noxree research facilities? They'd been developing weapons for the Resistance. The Kethmori colony worlds? They'd been training pilots and soldiers for this exact moment. Stone walked closer to Zethkar, his expression grave. You thought you were conquering individual worlds, Admiral. What you were actually doing was creating the largest alliance of free civilizations the galaxy has ever seen. Every species you enslaved brought their knowledge, their technology, their unique abilities to our cause. And now they're all coming home. The communication system crackled again, this time with a voice speaking in ancient Kethmori. General, the temporal displacement fields are active. Hegemony reinforcements won't be able to reach their colonies for at least 6 standard months. Zethkar's blood ran cold. Temporal displacement was theoretical technology, something the hegemony's best scientists had been unable to master. If the humans and their allies could manipulate spacetime itself. 6 months, Stone said quietly. 6 months for every enslaved world to free itself. 6 months for every scattered population to reunite with their homelands. 6 months for the galaxy to remember what freedom feels like. Another voice joined the communications, this one speaking in the musical language of the Silmari. General Stone, the broadcasting stations are ready. We can begin transmitting the liberation codes to all remaining slave populations. Liberation codes? Zethkar asked, though he dreaded the answer. Stone's smile was cold. Every slave ship, every processing center, every work camp the hegemony ever built, we've been infiltrating them for years. Placing our people in key positions, building hidden communication networks, preparing for this moment. With a single transmission, we can activate resistance cells on every hegemony world simultaneously. The tactical implications were overwhelming. The hegemony's entire infrastructure was built on slave labor. If every enslaved population rebelled at once, your civilization will collapse within days, Stone said, as if reading his thoughts. No slave labor means no industrial production. No industrial production means no weapons, no ships, no supplies for your military. No military means no way to stop the rebellion from spreading. Zethkar slumped in his command chair, the full scope of the disaster finally hitting him. You're not just freeing Earth. You're destroying the entire hegemony. No, Admiral, Stone corrected. We're freeing the galaxy. The hegemony will fall, but the civilizations you enslaved will survive. They'll go home, rebuild their worlds, and create something better than what came before. Something based on choice, not conquest. The display showed more real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Zethkar watched as hegemony installations fell one by one. Not to external invasion, but to internal rebellion. The very slaves the hegemony depended on were turning against their masters with devastating efficiency. "How long?" he whispered. "How long what? How long have you been planning this? How long have you known about us?" Stone considered the question carefully. "Humanity has been aware of the hegemony for 17 years. We've been actively planning your defeat for 15. But, the network of free civilizations you're seeing now? That's been growing for over 30 years. Long before humans ever left their solar system, the survivors of your conquests were finding each other, sharing knowledge, building alliances." He gestured to the display, which now showed a timeline of the resistance movement. "Every world you conquered created refugees. Some of those refugees found each other. They realized they were stronger together than apart. They began building something new in the dark spaces between your conquered territories." Zethkar watched the timeline unfold with growing amazement. The network had started small, a few survivors from a single destroyed world making contact with refugees from another conquest. But it had grown, spreading throughout the galaxy like a hidden root system, connecting every scattered population the hegemony had ever created. "Humans didn't create this network, Admiral," Stone explained. "We just became part of it. When our Deep Space Survey team witnessed your conquest of the Tauri system, they didn't just run home to warn Earth. They made contact with the existing resistance movement and offered our help." A new voice spoke from the communication system, this one human. "General, this is Dr. Chen at Research Station Alpha. The quantum tunnel network is stable. We can begin full-scale evacuation of the remaining slave populations." Zethkar looked up sharply. "Quantum tunnels?" Stone nodded. "Did you think we were only building weapons, Admiral? For 15 years, we've been developing technology to free every slave in the galaxy. Quantum tunnels that can transport people across impossible distances in seconds. Cloaked rescue ships that can infiltrate any prison. Medical technology that can heal the damage your integration process causes to enslaved populations." The scope of the operation was staggering. This wasn't just a military campaign, it was a galactic humanitarian mission on a scale that defied comprehension. "Every slave the hegemony ever took is going home, Admiral," Stone said quietly. "Every scattered population is being reunited with their homeworld. Every broken civilization is being given the chance to rebuild according to their own values and traditions." Zethkar stared at the display showing rescued slaves being transported through quantum tunnels to freedom, resistance cells overwhelming hegemony installations, and liberated worlds celebrating their independence. In less than 12 hours, the galaxy's most powerful empire was collapsing from within. "What happens to us?" he asked finally. Stone's expression softened slightly. "That depends on you, Admiral. The hegemony as a governing body will cease to exist, that's not negotiable. But, the individual worlds that make up your empire? They'll be given the same choice every other civilization gets: join the galactic community as free and equal partners, or go their own way in peace." He gestured to the surviving hegemony crew members visible on the bridge monitors. "Your people aren't evil, Admiral. They're just following a system they were born into. Given the choice between conquest and cooperation, most of them will choose cooperation. The few who don't." Stone shrugged. "Well, the galaxy is a big place. There's room for everyone to find their own path." Zethkar looked around his ruined bridge, at his defeated crew, at the tactical display showing the collapse of everything he had devoted his life to building. And, for the first time in his career, he found himself wondering if perhaps the humans and their allies were right. "What would you have us do?" he asked. Stone smiled for the first time since boarding the ship. "Help us, Admiral. Help us build something better than what came before. The galaxy doesn't need another empire. But, it could use experienced administrators, skilled engineers, and people who understand how to organize complex operations. Your knowledge and abilities don't have to be wasted just because the hegemony is ending." The offer was unexpected and, Zethkar had to admit, appealing. After decades of enforcing conquest and managing slave populations, the idea of using his skills to help civilizations rebuild themselves was intriguing. And if I refuse? Then, you'll be transported to a comfortable exile on a world of your choosing, with full provisions for whatever kind of life you want to build for yourself. No prison, no punishment, no execution. Just freedom to live as you see fit, as long as you don't try to harm others. Zethkar considered the offer in silence, watching as the last hegemony installation in the sector fell to the liberation forces. The empire he had served his entire life was ending, not in glorious battle, but in the collapse of its own fundamental assumptions about power and civilization. Perhaps it was time to learn a new way of thinking about the galaxy and humanity's place in it. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, former Admiral Zethkar stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, watching as another group of refugees arrived through the quantum tunnel network. These were Veltar children who had been taken from their families decades ago and forced to work in hegemony factories. Now they were going home. The sight still amazed him. In the old system, these children would have been processed, their cultural identities erased, their individual personalities molded to serve the state. Here, they were being carefully reunited with surviving family members or placed with loving foster families from their own species. They would learn their native languages, practice their traditional customs, and grow up as free beings. "Remarkable, isn't it?" said a familiar voice behind him. Zethkar turned to see General Stone approaching, though the human was no longer wearing a military uniform. Instead, he wore simple civilian clothing and carried a datapad filled with what Zethkar knew were construction reports from newly liberated worlds. "I keep expecting it to fall apart," Zethkar admitted. "All these different species, different cultures, different ways of thinking, somehow working together without anyone forcing them to cooperate. It goes against everything I was taught about governance." Stone joined him at the observation window. "It's not perfect. We have disagreements, conflicts, problems that need solving. The difference is that now we solve them through discussion and compromise instead of conquest and subjugation." Through the transparent aluminum, they could see ships from dozens of different civilizations docked at the station. Crystalline Veltar vessels glowed softly next to sleek Noxri fighters. Ancient Kethmori exploration ships sat beside human frigates and newly constructed hybrid vessels that incorporated technology from multiple species. "How do you make it work?" Zethkar asked. "How do you coordinate so many different groups without central authority?" Stone smiled. "You're thinking about it backwards. The question isn't how we make them work together. The question is why anyone thought they needed to be forced apart in the first place." A new ship appeared through the station's quantum tunnel, emerging from folded space with a flash of exotic radiation. Zethkar recognized it as a rescue vessel returning from another liberation mission. Through his enhanced vision, he could see former slaves from at least 6 different species aboard. "The hegemony taught that diversity was chaos," Stone continued. "That different cultures, different ideas, different ways of living were problems to be solved through standardization. But we've learned that diversity is actually strength. Each species brings unique knowledge, unique perspectives, unique solutions to problems the others might never have considered." As if to prove his point, Zethkar watched as the arriving refugees were met by a team of caregivers that included humans, Veltar, Silmari, and even a few former hegemony citizens who had chosen to join the liberation effort. Each species contributed something different to the process: human empathy and organizational skills, Veltar emotional healing techniques, Silmari cultural preservation methods, and hegemony administrative experience. "Your people are adapting well," Stone observed. Zethkar nodded. "Better than I expected. Most of my former crew have chosen to help with the reconstruction efforts. They're finding purpose in building instead of conquering." He paused, considering his words carefully. "I think many of them are happier than they ever were serving the hegemony." It was true. In the months since the hegemony's collapse, Zethkar had watched his former subordinates transform from rigid military functionaries into creative problem solvers. Without the pressure of maintaining an empire through violence, they had discovered talents and interests they never knew they possessed. Commander Vextar, who had once led ground forces in the conquest of primitive worlds, was now helping to design new agricultural systems for recently liberated colonies. His tactical mind had found new purpose in optimizing crop yields and distribution networks. The precision that had once made him an efficient killer now made him an excellent planner for peaceful logistics. Lieutenant Kielmora, a former weapons specialist, had become fascinated with human music and was working with Silmari artists to create new forms of cross-cultural art. Her technical knowledge of harmonic frequencies had led to breakthroughs in acoustic therapy for trauma survivors. "What about you?" Stone asked. "Any regrets about leaving the military life behind?" Zethkar considered the question. His new role as a coordinator for refugee resettlement was nothing like commanding a battle fleet, but it brought satisfactions he had never experienced during his military career. Every family he helped reunite, every liberated world that successfully established its own government, every former slave who found their way home, these felt like victories in a way that conquest never had. "I spent 50 years believing that order required domination," he said finally. "That peace could only exist under a single, unified authority. I was wrong. This is more complex than the old system, but it's also more alive. More creative. More hopeful." A chime sounded through the station, and the announcement system activated. The voice that spoke was human, but the words were translated simultaneously into over 300 different languages. "Attention Haven Station. We have received confirmation that the Rigel Colonial Collective has successfully established its new democratic government. The former slave population has voted to join the Galactic Liberation Alliance as a full member world. This brings our total membership to 473 sovereign civilizations." Cheers echoed through the observation deck as beings from dozens of species celebrated the news. Zethkar found himself smiling despite his attempts to maintain his former military stoicism. 473 worlds. 6 months ago, they had all been slaves or prisoners or scattered refugees. Now they were free nations, choosing their own paths and working together by choice rather than compulsion. "The numbers are staggering," he said to Stone. "In 6 months, you've liberated more worlds than the hegemony conquered in 50 years. "We had advantages the hegemony never did," Stone replied. "We weren't starting from scratch. Every world we liberated already had people who knew how to run complex societies, they just hadn't been allowed to do it their own way. And we had the help of every previous liberation to make the next one easier." The human pulled out his datapad and showed Zethkar the latest reports. Former hegemony worlds weren't just achieving independence, they were thriving. Agricultural production was up across the board as former slaves were finally able to apply their knowledge and creativity to solving problems instead of just following orders. Industrial output was exceeding pre-liberation levels as workers who actually had a stake in the results brought new energy and innovation to their tasks. "The hegemony model was fundamentally flawed," Stone continued. "It assumed that efficiency required conformity, that progress required control. But intelligence and creativity can't be forced. They have to be freely given. And people will only give their best efforts when they have a reason to care about the results." A new announcement filled the station. "Attention all residents. The Kethmori Restoration Fleet has reported successful completion of Operation Homeward. The last scattered populations of Kethmori refugees have been located and offered transport to the rebuilt Kethmori worlds. After 47 years of diaspora, the Kethmori people are once again united." Zethkar felt something he wasn't sure he had ever experienced before: pride in an accomplishment that didn't involve defeating an enemy. The Kethmori had been one of the first civilizations the hegemony had conquered during his military career. He had personally overseen the dispersal of their population across dozens of work camps, believing he was bringing order to a chaotic species. Now, nearly 5 decades later, he was watching those same scattered people come home. Not as conquerors or refugees, but as free beings choosing to reunite with their own culture and rebuild their civilization according to their own values. "I owe them an apology," he said quietly. Stone looked at him with understanding. "You'll have the chance to offer one. The Kethmori Council has requested that all former hegemony officers participate in a truth and reconciliation process. Not for punishment, but for healing. They believe that understanding what happened is important for making sure it never happens again. The idea was both terrifying and appealing. To face the people he had wronged, to acknowledge the harm his actions had caused, to be held accountable for his role in their suffering, it would be the hardest thing he had ever done. But perhaps it was also the most necessary. What happens next? Sethkar asked. When all the slaves are free and all the refugees have gone home, what does this alliance become? Stone was quiet for a long moment, watching as more ships arrived through the quantum tunnels. We keep learning, he said finally. Keep growing. Keep figuring out how to build something better than what came before. The alliance isn't a destination, it's a process. A way of working together that gets stronger every time we choose cooperation over conflict. Another ship emerged from the tunnel, this one displaying an unfamiliar configuration. Sethkar's enhanced vision identified it as incorporating design elements from at least 8 different species, but combined in a way he had never seen before. New ship design, he asked. Stone nodded. Joint engineering project between the Veltar, the Noxri, and 3 recently liberated civilizations we hadn't met before. They're calling it a friendship-class vessel. Built specifically for first contact missions with new species. The implications struck Sethkar immediately. You're planning to expand beyond the former hegemony territories? Not to conquer, Stone clarified quickly. To explore. To make friends. To offer help to anyone who wants it and leave alone anyone who doesn't. The galaxy is vast, and there are probably thousands of civilizations we've never encountered. Some of them might be facing their own versions of the hegemony. Others might have knowledge and perspectives that could benefit everyone. The observation deck filled with more beings as word spread about the successful Kethmori reunification. Sethkar found himself surrounded by a celebration that included former enemies who were now working together as equals. A human engineer was sharing technical diagrams with a Veltar artist while a Silmari philosopher discussed ethics with a reformed hegemony administrator. 6 months ago, such a scene would have been impossible. Different species working together freely, sharing knowledge openly, celebrating each other's successes without fear or coercion. The hegemony had taught that this kind of cooperation would lead to chaos and inefficiency. Instead, it had led to the fastest period of technological and social progress the galaxy had ever seen. The hegemony believed that strength came from uniformity, Sethkar said, watching the diverse crowd around them. But, you've proven that strength actually comes from diversity working toward common goals. Stone smiled. Humanity didn't prove that alone. Every species in this alliance contributed to that proof. Including yours. The former hegemony citizens who chose to join us brought valuable knowledge about large-scale organization and administration. Your experience with logistics and coordination has been crucial to making the liberation effort work on such a massive scale. It was true. The skills Sethkar had learned during his military career, resource management, personnel coordination, strategic planning, had proven surprisingly valuable in peaceful applications. The same abilities that had once made him an effective conqueror now made him an effective organizer for humanitarian operations. A final announcement echoed through the station. Attention all Alliance members. We have received a priority transmission from the Outer Rim territories. 3 previously unknown civilizations have requested contact with the Alliance. They report that they have been fighting their own version of the hegemony for centuries and are seeking alliance and support. Diplomatic teams are being assembled for immediate departure. The celebration around them grew louder as beings from across the Alliance volunteered for the diplomatic mission. Sethkar watched humans, Veltar, Kethmori, Silmari, and even former hegemony citizens step forward to offer their services. More work to do, Stone observed. Sethkar nodded. More people to help. More civilizations to liberate. More opportunities to prove that cooperation is stronger than conquest. As he spoke, he realized that he meant it. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be those who believed that might made right, that the strong had the right to dominate the weak. But there would also always be those who chose to stand together against such beliefs. The hegemony had tried to enslave Earth and had awakened something far more powerful than they could have imagined. Not just human ingenuity or military might, but the fundamental truth that free beings working together could accomplish anything. And now that truth was spreading across the galaxy, one liberated world at a time. Looking out at the ships departing Haven Station for their next mission of liberation and friendship, Zethkar realized that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when beings chose hope over fear, cooperation over conquest, and freedom over slavery. The hegemony had deeply regretted trying to enslave Earth. Soon, every would-be conqueror in the galaxy would share that regret.